all you do is, like I say, the engine's hot because we've been driving around. We've actually taken my son to hospital this morning. He had a minor operation after trapping his finger yesterday. Hi everybody, and welcome to the oil change for the CRDi 2-litre Sportage Mk3. That's the SL series as it's known. We're going to do the oil change on this motor today. Before we start, what we've done is I've actually been out in the car and got it nice and hot. I've also jacked us up onto, I just run us up onto two boards on either side, two scaffold boards. They've been put in place so we can keep the car high enough to get under it and do the change, but without actually causing us any issues with oil not running out. What I've also got here is 2 cans of Win's engine flush. I like to use engine flush. I don't like to just drop the oil and put new oil in. I tend to find that it cleans out all the harmful deposits inside, gets rid of any carbon and so on. So the directions here: bring the engine up to operating temperature. It is. Switch off the engine. Add the contents of the can to the used engine oil. Start the engine and idle it for 20 minutes. While the engine is still warm, we're going to drain the oil, change the oil filter, change the oil to new oil, and then away we go. Basically, these 2 cans, so each one of these cans does 3 to 6 litres. This engine holds 8 litres of oil, so I'm going to use both of them. All you do is, like I say, the engine's hot because we've been driving around. We've actually taken my son to hospital this morning. He had a minor operation after trapping his finger yesterday, so we're just going to give that a shake. Pop this in. Oh, he's okay, by the way. Baby's absolutely fine. Just had to have one of his nails removed, and in a week he's going to get checked up and everything's going to be good, but we'll concentrate on this for now. I can bring you guys up to date on that on another video. Okay, and second can in. That's 2 cans between 3 and 6 litres each. That's 6 to 12 litres that would have treated. Like I say, we're on 8 litres here, so let's get rid of the cans. Put the lid back in, and we're going to idle the car for 20 minutes. And remember, this is the 2-litre diesel. Mine's the first edition, but that shouldn't make any difference. It's the 2-litre diesel CRDi engine that we're doing this on. Start the engine and I'll come back to you in 20 minutes. Okay everybody, I've just left the engine running for just over 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I was watching Samcrack's newest update where he's told us all about the different cars he's got, showing us what's happening with his Ferrari, telling us he's got just trying to sell a few. I love Samcrack. Please, if you don't watch him already, it's a really good channel. It's really worth watching if you're interested in working on cars or you're getting cheap deals on cars. He's in America, so any of you guys who are over in the UK with me, some of the stuff still works. You can still do the same things. They're obviously the same vehicles, just left and right hand drives, swap overs, but he uses some sites we can't get to. I'm not sure Copart works in the UK, for example, but his basics of how he does things makes a load of sense. So anyway, back to what we're doing. This Sportage SL, 2-litre diesel. It's been running for the 20 minutes or whatever it was, 15 minutes that the cans and the flush said that I had to. I'm now going to leave it to cool down a bit. So you're supposed to do an oil change when it's hot, and that way you've got some nice runny oil that's going to flow out properly. The problem is it's currently 90 degrees Celsius, so God knows what that is in Fahrenheit, but at least, you know, it's hot. It's close to the boiling temperature of water, which is 100 degrees. So if I open the face and let the oil out, I've got a chance of it getting on my hands and burning me. Now, with it being oil, it's bad enough with hot water, but with oil it's going to be sticky. You're not going to get off easily. It's going to be red hot, and I'm going to cause myself some damage. So I'm going to let this cool down a little bit, maybe get down to 60-70 degrees, just so it's still warm enough to be fluid and liquid, but not hot enough to be able to burn me. In the meantime, I'm going to take you through the tools that we're going to use to do the rest of the job, and what we've already used. So a couple of tools we've actually used to take the belly pan off, because I've actually already done that. You guys are going to watch that I'm filming it all a bit out of sequence, so I apologize, but I've already taken the belly pan off. The reason for that for me was just that I want to wait till the temperature's the oil is the right temperature, and then just get under and take everything out to drain the oil, the filter and so on out. So I've done the belly pan. You're going to see the tools that I've used for that and the rest of the tools that I'm going to use. In the meantime, I'll show you also where the fasteners are on the belly pan. So there are some clips that you have to take out, and there are some bolts. There are 8 clips and 6 bolts in total. They're going to come out. You're going to see that in a second. Then I'll tell you I'm taking the belly pan off, but I've already done it. And then at that point we should be cool enough to be able to get the oil out of the car, change all the washers and so forth, put everything back together and get the new oil and filter back in the vehicle. This is what we're going to use today for the oil change on the Sportage. So we've got a bucket on the left to collect the old oil. We've got a rag for obviously cleaning up our hands. We have a 6mm Allen key, or hex key as you Americans may call it. We have a 12mm socket on a ratchet. We have a couple of screwdrivers, 2 different sizes. I'm not sure which one of those 2 I'm going to need, so I'm going to just take both in. 17mm spanner, a 1-inch spanner. I'm not sure with the 1-inch or the 22 which it's going to be. I'm pretty sure it's the 1. We've got a knife, which you're going to see me using just in a moment, a little flick knife. The oil filter, and we've got 8 litres of oil, because this vehicle actually takes 8 litres. I'm not sure we're going to get all 8 litres in, because when we empty out we may not get everything out. So we're going to get onto the vehicle. Oh, we'll also need what are they called? Funnel. We'll need a funnel later to put the oil back into the top of the engine. It's going to be a bit difficult with that one, but that's everything we need. We're going to get under the car and we're going to show you what we're doing to take the tray off underneath. For those of you who've never seen these clips before, you're supposed to be able to put a screwdriver in, a larger one, unscrew that screw in the centre, but as you see it just turns and it doesn't actually unscrew. So what I tend to do is get my knife, which is just neat open my knife up, and I pop it in, maybe you can see there next to the bolt, and just bring everything down a little bit, give myself a bit of space. Once it's coming down, once the bolt's coming down, it then does unscrew with your fingers, comes out all the way, and then you can pop the back of the clip out. So you end up with 2 pieces like that, and that's where it went in. When we put them back in, all you do is push this piece in first, and then push the bolt in place, and it expands them and holds them in place. So like I say, we've got 8 of those to do, and then the 6 bolts. Be back in a minute. So now the belly pan is actually off the vehicle. I've put it on top of the engine bay so I can show you where all the clips were a bit clearer. So here, 3 here, 4, 5 and 6, they all have those clips, these clips here, which come apart, so you actually have 2 pieces to them, and I'll show you how they go back in afterwards. These bolts here were in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 location. So remember, we're looking at the top of the belly pan here. That's the bit as it goes to the ground. This is the bit that's closest to the engine. So 8 of those clips and 6 of the bolts. And one thing I did forget to show you here is you come around the back, these 2, they're the 2 that are in the wheel well. So there's one here and one on the other side that were actually in the wheel arch. All easy enough to get to. You don't have to do anything crazy to get in there. I'm not going to bother washing this because it's only going to get more road dirt on it, and we're going to let the oil cool down, and we're going to get on with dropping the oil out of the vehicle. What we've done now is just put this bucket. I'm using any old bucket. You can use a proper drain pan, but I had this 12-litre bucket available, so I'm just going to use that. And what we're going to do now is we're going to undo this bolt here at the back of the sump. Let's make sure I'm doing things the right direction. This is a 17mm. It's a 17mm spanner. You just need to give it a good yank. It's open, got the bucket in place. I'm trying not to use my fingers on this because the oil is still a little hot. I've let it cool down a little bit, but not quite enough to be able to let my fingers get close to the oil. I'm just going to try and get this out without my fingers getting in the way. I don't mind oil getting all over this at all, not a problem. We can wipe the bolt off as long as I don't melt my fingers. I'm happy. Melted fingers are not fun. So let's just see if I can do a little bit with my fingers. Like I say, I don't want to burn myself on hot oil, but if I keep the pressure on until the last second, there we go. Oil's going into the bucket. I've got the sump plug out, so we're going to leave that to drain. I'm actually going to leave it for somewhere around 20-30 minutes just to totally drain out. While that's happening, when that gets to the point where it's only a little dribble, we'll come back and we'll do the oil filter and get everything coming out there. Back in a moment. I've moved the bucket out of the way because most of the oil is dripping. As you can see, there's just a little dribble coming out now. So I've just put the engine flush can underneath to collect that because I need the big bucket at the front. And as you can see, this is a 12-litre bucket and it's mostly full, but I need to get the oil filter off. So we have a 6mm hex key, or Allen key as we call them in the UK, and it goes into the bottom of the filter here, and then we undo this plug. Now I'm not entirely sure why they do it this way because I've never seen it like this on any other vehicle, but this is what they do. This is what we have to do. So we're going to undo the end plug and let the oil drain out of there. You'll see I'm putting everything on a microfiber here. I'm not letting it get on the floor and get stones in it and things to damage the grips and so on, damage the threads, sorry. And now I think this is a 1 inch. I wasn't sure whether it's a 1 inch or a 22, and I couldn't tell before, but yeah, it's a 1 inch, and this is for actually it isn't a 1 inch, it might be a 24mm. I'm gonna have to find something to get this off because this is the oil filter housing, and it's not a replaced part. This is something you reuse, so the filter goes inside. So I'm gonna have to go and find the right spanners and things, and the right tools to take this off. I might just use an adjustable. The 25mm is just spinning on it, so it's definitely not a 25mm or 1 inch. It's going to be something like a 24mm or a weird imperial size that we don't use here in the UK. I'll get that off and I'll come back to you guys. The oil filter's off. It's actually a 24mm, so this is a 24mm, and I used a socket. I've just got a 24mm socket on it. Came off okay. Loads more oil came out. Absolutely dumped a load of oil. That's the old filter. As you can see, it's absolutely disgusting. That pushes just simply into there, like so. I'm not going to put it back in because I'm trying to drain the oil out of this. But here, just there is an O-ring. That's going to need replacing. And you can see that when my finger's pushing it side to side. That O-ring needs replacing. On the bolt that goes into the bottom of that filter housing, there's another O-ring that needs replacing, and you should replace your sump plug washer. This is a copper washer. I couldn't find the specs of this anywhere, nowhere online could anybody tell me what washer that needs. So I've done a bit of an old school cheap trick, which I would not advise anybody does, which is I've turned that washer upside down. So what should happen is, because it had shaped it into one direction previously, we should shape it back and you should get some tension on it. Also, while I was draining the oil to allow things to flow a little better, I took the dipped this, can't remember the name, my headset, the dipstick, that's it. The oil level dipstick was taken out, and I also took the cap off. That allowed air to go into the top of the engine while the oil was flowing out the bottom. And now things are not perfect under there. I have spilt some, so if we come around the front you'll see I've actually spilt a little bit of oil there. Been a little bit messy. I'm going to clean all that up. Obviously that's bad for the environment. You don't want oil everywhere. I've done my best to collect what I can. So I've got the 8 litres in that bucket and in the can at the back. So what I'm going to do is put that old oil into the cans that the new oil is coming out of. Once I've done the oil change, I'll transfer it to that and I'll take it to the local recycling centre, and all this oil that's on the floor, I'm going to put dish soap over it, just any old cheap dish soap, and some water, and give it a good scrub down so it's not going to pollute the environment and get into the drains and so on. That's not good for any part of the world. So wherever you're in the world, you've got different regulations and specifications what to do with it, but whatever you need to do in your area, get rid of this oil in a good way. Please don't just be dumping it down drains. That's really not good for anybody. It's not good for the water courses, it's not good for anyone who's around. It's just wastage, and it's horrible, and it's quite hazardous to health. I should have been wearing gloves. I don't like wearing gloves because I've actually got a latex allergy, and I've run out of latex gloves at the moment, so I haven't been wearing them. I'm going to put the dipstick back in before I do the rest of the work. I'm going to clean up the area, get the dipstick in. So what we're going to do now is we're going to put the sump plug back on as soon as all the oil's finished draining. So we're going to put the old sump plug back in with the washer turned upside down. Normally you would put a new washer on there. I will try and find out what the measurements are for that from somewhere, and see if I can get it as a link at the bottom of the on the video in the comments, and see if I can get you some sort of idea of what to buy. If you can't get one, like I say, I've turned it over, it should be okay, but it may leak. If it does leak, I'm going to waste all my oil because I'm going to have to drop it all again just to take the sump plug out and put the new washer on. So it's a risk I'm taking. It's an expensive risk, but I don't know where I can get the right washer from, so I have to take it. I have no option at the moment. So we're going to put a new filter in, we're going to put the oil rings on it, and then we're going to come back to you in a moment. Okay, coming up to the end of the install. What we've done here is put new oil ring on the filter housing and a new filter. That's going to go in. That filter just pushes down. You have to make sure you push quite hard on it, because you have to get the filter to go over a little tube that's at the bottom of the housing. This theoretically, everybody tells me this should go on by hand and then it's a quarter turn. Trust me, that isn't going in by hand. With the new O-ring in place, it's a very tight seal. So what we do is we just get everything tight, get it so it touches, and just give it a bit of a nip. Don't go too crazy. The other thing I've found in as well with the 24mm is it's really hard to get it off this plastic housing at the bottom. That's tight. We've got a new O-ring on the plug for the bottom of the filter housing. So again, we're just going to tighten this up as far as we can by hand. That actually goes in pretty well. And we're just going to use the 8mm to tighten that up a little. Sorry, the 6mm to tighten that up a little bit. Just give that a nip. Don't go too crazy, you don't want to be stripping any threads. Then we're going to go to the back of the engine, and we're just going to put the sump plug back in. And again, hand tight, and then we're just going to nip it up. I haven't got my spanner. That wasn't clever. Give me 1 second, guys. Let's get up. Let me get my 17mm. Look at that, spanner vision. You'll notice I've put some cardboard down just to protect myself from all the oil that I have managed to spill on the floor. So just get it so it nips, and then a little more. I just want to make sure it's not going to leak when I put the new oil in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put 4 litres of oil in and see where we're going, and then if anything does leak out, I'm only losing the 4 litres, not the whole 8. So let's just get around everything to make sure there's none of the old oil. So when I'm looking for leaks, I'm only going to see new leaks that are happening. The old leaks, any old oil isn't going to be dripping and giving me a false reading. So that's all good. I'll put the 4 litres in and I'll be back in a moment. 4 litres of oil is in there. It's 5watt 30. I've used fully synthetic. That's what's recommended, so that's what it's getting. We have no leaks here. We have no leaks here. but we do have drippage. The reason for that is I was a bit clumsy and I dripped a little bit. So if you drip any around the filler neck, you'll see it coming down. It goes over the boot here, the CV boot, and onto the suspension, the lower suspension. It's not the worst thing to happen. I'd rather it didn't, partly because I've wasted a bit of oil, but also because we're now going to have a little bit of oil on the engine, so when I start it, it's going to have to burn that off and it's going to stink. But doesn't seem to be any leakage. I'm just giving it a few minutes, just making sure we've not got any big problems. Obviously this is cold oil, so you never know what's going to happen when things get warm. This is the point that I'm going to worry about for the next couple of days, because this is a washer that I've reused. I turned it over and I reused it rather than putting a new one in, which again I don't recommend anybody does. It was just an emergency. I realised as I took it off that I hadn't remembered to go and find one. I don't have another vehicle to get to somewhere that would have one, so I was a little stuck. I'm doing this on the road as well. It's not like I've got another vehicle or anything like that. So anyway, no leaks. What I'm going to do now is top up slowly. So I've put 4 litres in. I believe this vehicle takes 8 litres according to the specification. So we're going to put another 2 in, and then we're going to check the dipstick and see, because when you drop the oil there may be some left in the system, so we may find there's maybe, you know, 1 litre, 2 litres, whatever, still in the system of the old stuff that you can't get out. So we're going to just top up slowly now until the level is correct on the dipstick, on the level meter, and as soon as we know we've got the right amount in, we'll stop pouring. I'll start the engine, give it a quick warm up, get everything swirling around and come back and check under. But that is pretty much it, guys. We will put the cover back on here probably tomorrow. I think I'll leave the cover off and drive without it for a couple of days, a day out at least, maybe 2 days, just to make sure that we've no leaks. So I'll see them straight away. Once I'm happy there's no leaks, we'll put the cover back on and we'll be good to go. So we did take a full 8 litres of oil, so this vehicle does drain really well. So whenever you actually do this change, you're going to need exactly 8 litres going in. Use a funnel, because if you spill it all down the engine like I have, it's going to stink. I'm going to take it out for a test drive now, literally as we speak. When I come back, I'm going to clean up the area where I've been working, get rid of the oil, and hopefully we'll have no leaks. Like I say, I'm going to leave the tray off for probably for a day. I know I've got a trip out tomorrow, so I'm not sure whether I want to leave it off, because there's a couple of cables and so on that if a rock comes up it's going to damage them, a couple of bits of pipe work. So I may put it back on, I may not before tomorrow. But this little drive now, I've dropped down 20 degrees in temperature on the engine just from putting the new oil in, because obviously it's cold oil. Let me just close these windows so you guys can hear me a little better. Obviously it's cold oil, so it's cooled the engine down by putting the oil in. Right everybody, I've got back home and actually there's no leak, so I've managed to put the bolts back in on the under tray, and only the bolts so far, because what I'm going to do now is show you how to do the clips. So if you see this hole here, we have one part of the clip that goes into that hole. So you have to push the prongs into the hole and get it to sit flush, and then the screwing part actually doesn't screw, you just push it in, and that's it. That has expanded the feet at the back into the hole. I'm going to do another one for you. So we're going to take this one into 2. The back piece goes into the hole, and the second piece pushes in. They're that simple. Now guys, anything I've done on this video may or may not be the best way to do it. I do things my way. 1 second. Trying to use my mouth to do things when I shouldn't. So yeah, I do things my way. It's definitely not the only way to do things. It may or may not be the best way. If anybody knows a better way to do any of this, please let me know. Put it in the comments. I'll be happy to learn from anybody else as much as anybody else is happy to learn from me. I'm just going to do this back one here while we're talking. Like I say, I don't do things the only way it's possible to be done, but I do it my way and the way I've been taught, and hopefully it's good enough. Please make sure your car's secure when you've got it held up. Don't just put it on any old jack and hope it's going to stay in place. Make sure you're supported by the wheels or on axle stands or whatever you can do to make sure you're as safe as possible. Please guys, do not get injured while you're doing this. The vehicle is very heavy. If it lands on you, you're going to know about it. Take care everyone, subscribe and like, and I'll speak to you all soon.